All right. Welcome to this YouTube live for narcissistic abuse recovery, and I'm Miles from Recovery. And what I want to do today is talk about. There's a lot that we're going to cover today, so I do hope that you stay with me. But recovering from narcissistic abuse isn't just about surviving. It's not about surviving. It's about rebuilding, and it's not about gluing back the shattered pieces of our life back together. It's about creating something that's entirely new. And whether you feel trapped in the quicksand of a narcissist control, or haunted by their toxic whispers, long after that they're even gone, this is the moment that we can reclaim our story. And in this live, what I want to do is what you're going to learn is how to stop living in the shadow of the past and start writing a future where the narcissist has no say. So if you're ready to shift from victim to survivor, and even become like a thriver, then this live is for you. Because so let's explore the steps to break the narcissistic abuse cycle. And because silence, these silence, the echoes, we need to silence the echoes of the narcissist's voice it's kind of bouncing around in our head, and discover the resilient, the most powerful you that you've always been. It's like your freedom, it's like your peace, it's like your future are waiting. So let's find them together, because recovering from narcissistic abuse, it's no small task. It's like trying to teach your body a brand new language, a language that doesn't carry the scars from the past, those lies and the manipulation that's kind of dragging behind us like chains. It's not about that at all, right? And let's be real. And this is the toughest part. It's recovering from our past, because the past, it never seems to let go. And it's like this relentless whisper that kind of goes back in our minds. It says, this is who you are, this is all that you will ever be. But here's the truth: the future, that's yours to create. Because imagine a future after narcissism is like a blank canvas, because it is. And it's just waiting for you to paint it. And the whole problem, big problem of just being in these narcissistic relationships, is that, the challenge becomes picking up the brush when for so long a narcissist has been holding the brush for us, and they held it, and they were painting our lives, with the darkest colors of the palette. So what does that actually mean? Well, let me put it to you this way, because imagine that you're stuck in quicksand and you're just tangled in this emotional toxic web of narcissistic abuse, and you're waiting for the narcissist to come along and throw a rope to pull you out, to save you. Well, here's the truth: there's no rope coming. There isn't one. And the longer that we wait in this quicksand, the deeper that we're going to sink. And I know it's a tough truth to hear, but I'm here to speak the truth, right? But it's also a freeing one, because once we hear it, we understand. Because when you realize the narcissist isn't coming to save you, you also realize that you don't need them. And that rope, you've always been holding it all along. You've always been capable of pulling yourself free. And here's the truth about recovery: you can't wait for the narcissist to fix you. You can't wait for them to swoop in and magically make you feel better. Why? Because that's how this works. The power to heal, to move forward, to rebuild your life, it's always been inside you. And think of it like rebuilding a house after a storm. The narcissist might have, knocked it down. Yeah, it knocked it down brick by brick, but the foundation, that's still there. And that's you. And you're the architect, you're the builder. You're the one that decides, this house that you're going to rebuild looks like. And the narcissist may have shaken your world. They may have, but the power to redesign your future has always been yours. So, where do we start? We start by choosing ourselves over the toxic whims of a narcissist, by saying, enough is enough. I'm not waiting for the narcissist to come back into my life to control me again or control me anymore. It stops here. And when we take that first step, no matter how small it might seem, it might be as simple as journaling your feelings, or reaching out for help, or just reminding yourself every day that you deserve more than what the narcissist gave you. And yeah, it's hard and it's messy. And there will be days when you feel like giving up, and when the past feels way too heavy to carry. But let me tell you this: every step that you take towards out of the narcissist quicksand It becomes a step to your future, one that you get to create a life outside the narcissist shadow. Because here's the most important thing to remember. You are the one who is going to save you. You're the one who decides what the when the story is the next chapter. You decide. And when you take your power back, when you stop waiting for the narcissist to fix you, when you stop waiting for someone else to fill in this void that they've created, you realize that you're not broken at all. You're healing and you're growing and you're stronger than you ever thought that you were. And you've already, survived this narcissist game. Now you're going to change the rest of your story. You're going to change what this story actually means and create a new future for yourself. Because here's the truth about recovery: we can't wait for a miracle. We can't just sit back and hope that someone someday will save us. Maybe it's the narcissist, and then everything will be fixed. That's a fantasy because healing, healing doesn't work that way. And we can't dream our way out of the pain of our past, hoping that it'll just magically disappear. Because think about it like this: it's not like we're going to wake up one morning and suddenly all the ruminations, the constant, the crushing worry, the anxiety, from narcissistic abuse is just going to vanish. We can't, because those narcissistic thoughts, they don't disappear into thin air. And that's the model that we've been conditioned to cling on to during these narcissistic cycles. It's a belief that, someone outside of us, a narcissist perhaps, will just swoop in and fix the way that we feel inside. But we all know how that story goes, don't we? We know. We end up just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then nothing changes. So, what do we do instead? Well, what we do is we actually work through the hurt. We witness our emotions, our own emotions, even the hard ones, and especially the hard ones. Because when the narcissist has drained us, we feel like we can't possibly take another step. We can hold ourselves. We can become our own anchor, our own source of strength. And do you know what happens when we do this? We rise up again, slowly but surely. We begin to feel better on the inside. And when that happens, then something amazing shifts. Our focus moves away from what's in the rearview mirror, the narcissistic abuse that may have endured, that's been chasing us. And we start to feel worthy again, worthy of love, of peace, of happiness, worthy of life itself. And this is how we anchor ourselves out of narcissistic trauma. The way we do it is we don't shy away from it. We face it head on. And by doing this, we can reclaim our power and step into something, entirely new, a life on freedom and self-love, not the constant fear and pain that's instilled by narcissistic abuse. So imagine stepping out of a dark room that you've been trapped in for years, afraid of what lies inside. But now the darkness doesn't hold the power over us anymore. And we've seen, for what it really is. We've stared down into the shadows of the narcissist manipulation, and we faced them with bravery. And you've stopped letting them define your world. And then comes the rebirth. When we stop fearing our past, when we stop letting the narcissist chaos dictate who we are, we can see the past for what it truly is. We can see that it has shaped us. Yes, it has. But it doesn't get to own us. And from that place of clarity, we begin to feel, whole again. And it's like rising up from the ashes. Everything that we tried to break us, what happens? We end up becoming reborn. We end up becoming stronger and ready to embrace life that is ours to create. And we learn to love ourselves again. When we truly love ourselves, something incredible shifts. We stop fearing of fear, especially fear of a narcissist's control, and start living in love for ourselves and the life that we deserve. Because recovery is about reclaiming our power. When we heal from narcissistic abuse, something extraordinary actually happens. We regain control of our own destiny, right? And that's where we don't just survive. We emerge, stronger and more resilient because of what we've been through and the challenges that we faced under the grip of a narcissist were unlike anything that most people can even fathom. But we made it and we survived. And now We can take back the reins of our lives. And here's the thing about narcissistic abuse: it leaves a mess behind. And imagine, lifting the hood of a car only to find all wires are crossed, there's parts missing, there's oil leaking on the ground, leaving a stain. Like, it's chaos. And this represents, what the narcissist does to our minds and to our emotions. And it's chaos. But recovery isn't about staying stuck in that mess. It's about rolling up our sleeves. It's about fixing what's broken and getting that engine out of our minds and get our spirit recharged again and running software, running programming that's stronger, healthier, and more efficient than ever before. And this is the difference between living as a victim and living as a survivor. And when we're trapped in this victim mentality, it's easy to just kind of point fingers and say, I'm this way because of them. And we blame the narcissist and the situation and the manipulative games. Yes, what happened was real and it did shape us. But staying in that mindset means that we wear the label of, hello, my name is victim. And it becomes a badge that we carry, a weight that's kind of heavy on our necks, preventing us from moving forward. And it's time to let go of that label, because the true power comes when we shed that victim's skin and step into the strength as a survivor. And here's the good news: that label doesn't stick as we heal. It's like the label, the victim label, the glue that's on the back of that sticker, that adhesive, it starts to lose its grip. And the more that we face our pain, process our emotions, and reclaim our self worth, the less that label holds power over us. And eventually, it just kind of falls away altogether. And one day, we will look in the mirror and we will see someone new, someone free from the shackles of narcissistic abuse. And we finally see ourselves without the weight of that label. And this is what recovery from narcissistic abuse is all about. Because recovery isn't about, just getting over what happened. It's about understanding that we are more than the trauma that we endured. We're much more than it. It's like we're taking those lessons that we learned and the resilience that we've built and the strength that we've earned, and using them to rebuild our lives. We don't erase the past, but we can transform it. We can change the meaning from what our experiences were and the pain that comes from that wisdom. Right? The chaos becomes clarity, and the narcissist's control over us, it just fades off into the distance. So what does it look like to reclaim your power? Because reclaiming your power means shifting from saying, I'm this way because of them, right, to saying, I'm this way because I chose to do what I chose to do after them. And that's about stopping that endless loop of waiting for someone else to fix the wreckage the narcissist has left behind. This is where you realize that you have the ability to fix yourself, to rebuild your life on your terms. And it's like building up the pieces of that have been shattered by someone else and deciding what they've become, instead of letting you define who you are. We don't give our power to someone else. And here's the most important part of this journey: when the narcissist, the victim label, when it finally falls off, it's not just about healing from your experience, it's about growth. This is where you realize your story isn't defined by what the narcissist did to you, it's about what you've done for yourself since. And that's the story that we're going to tell after our survival, right? Because it's the one where you reclaimed your life, where you reclaimed your power, right? And your peace, found it in the middle of all of this chaos. Instead of destroying you, it made you stronger. And that's the moment in recovery where everything changes. It's like when that switch in your brain flips from survivor to thriver. And that moment, you stop just getting through the day and start creating a life. Same story, same past, but now you're writing the next chapter, and one that comes from surviving the narcissist, manipulation and control. And it's that messy middle that Brene Brown writes about. The part where you're vulnerable, where you fall down, where you struggle and you get back up. But here's the beauty in that: every time that we rise up again, you add, meaning to your recovery story. There's an act 3 to every great comeback story. It's the moment the hero, after facing narcissistic abuse, finds their strength and challenges their fate. So what does act 3 look like for you? It's the part where you stop saying, I'm this way because of my trauma, and start saying, I'm this way because I chose to heal from it. I chose to find meaning from it. It's when you shift from thinking, from being a narcissist victim to becoming the architect of your own life, your own healing process. And this is where you stop carrying that baggage and start rewriting the narrative of your life. Yes, everything that happened to you happened. We have to acknowledge that. It's real. It shaped you. But here's the truth. It doesn't have to define who you are. Because now is the time to test your own hero story, to take your all the pain that you've had and the lessons and the resilience of surviving narcissistic abuse and use it to create something new. And that's what the hero's journey is all about, facing the challenge and learning from it and coming out stronger on the other side. And when we step into this part of the journey, something magical happens. Something really magical happens. We realize that we're not, reacting to life anymore. We're creating it. The narcissist doesn't control the outcome anymore. And we are the ones that decide what comes next. Because it's not about just surviving narcissistic abuse, it's about rising up from it, about taking our power back. And that realization, that in itself, right there, that moment, that's the game changer. This is where you step into the power as a creator of your own reality, where you start to believe that you're capable of designing a life that isn't, dictated by a narcissist's toxic influence, a life where your choices, where your mindset and your actions determine your future. And this is what thriving after narcissistic abuse looks like. It's not about erasing what happened. It's about transforming that painful past into a foundation of something that's beautiful. And here's the best part: your story isn't over. In fact, the most powerful chapters that are still unwritten. And that's your story. That's your life story. And now you hold the pen. You decide what happens next. No narcissist, no manipulator, no emotional predator can write this story for you. It's yours to craft. And it breaks my heart to see this, but I see it all the time. It happens all the time. When we begin the recovery journey, so many of us believe that, every thought that we have is the truth. Because if it's in our head, it must be real, right? Well, one of the greatest realizations that I had in my own recovery was this: just because you have a thought doesn't mean that it's true. And just let that sink in for a moment. Because think about how many thoughts the average person has in a day. Tens of thousands of thoughts constantly going through our mind. And for many of us who are recovering from narcissistic abuse, who are carrying this deep, sad trauma with us, 90 to 95% of those thoughts are the same ones, day in and day out. And they're not just random thoughts or traumatic memories, they're painful echoes of the past that bounce around in our minds like a broken record. Now imagine if we believed every single one of those thoughts. Imagine. What kind of life would we create with that level of thinking? And let's take a step even further. Imagine those thoughts aren't even yours. They're the same negative patterns that the narcissists use to manipulate and control you. But now, now they've turned into your inner dialogue, and worse, they're coming at you in your own voice. So do you see the trap? When that happens, we start to live life that's dictated by those thoughts. And if our thoughts are negative, then that's the life that we end up creating. And maybe we isolate ourselves because we don't want to hear those thoughts anymore. We just want to shut them down. And when we do, it's not just from the world. We end up shutting ourselves down from us, from ourselves. What we're talking about is we dissociate. We pretend that the thoughts aren't there. We bury them deep and we distract ourselves with just endless texts. And we can fill our days completely so that there's absolutely no room to just stop and think. But here's the problem, with that strategy. The software is still running. That old outdated program, one of fear, one of shame, one of self-doubt, that's the one that the narcissist installed, is still running in the background, controlling everything. And we keep relying on those coping strategies, isolating, dissociating, avoiding. What kind of life are we building for ourselves? And are we truly living, Or are we just kind of just trying to survive the day to get past this one negative thought that's going to replace by another and then another? Because it's like carrying a backpack that's full of rocks everywhere that we go. And we keep adding more and more to it, thinking that we can manage, thinking that we can outrun this weight. But eventually, we have to stop and ask, what kind of life can I create if I'm carrying all of these burdens with me, these heavy rocks, the lies, the manipulation, and that the narcissist has given us, and it weighs us down? And the answer is clear: not a life that we want, and not the life that we deserve. And this is where the work begins. The first step is realizing that our thoughts don't define us. They're not always true, and they're not always even ours. We've been programmed by a narcissist to believe their version of our own story. But recovery is about that unpacking that backpack one rock at a time. It's about challenging those old thought patterns, about rewriting that inner dialogue and reclaiming the voice that's in our own minds. We don't be defined by the traumatic thoughts and the traumatic memories. And when we start to believe this, everything begins to change. We stop carrying, their lives and start creating a life that we deserve. And here's the simple truth about recovery: if we want something to change, something has to change. Sounds obvious, right? I get it. But how many times do we find ourselves stuck in the same cycles, thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, and wondering, why nothing is getting better? It's like we're trapped in a cycle, a loop that's created by the narcissist, where everything feels like it's been repeat and nothing ever shifts. So let's break that down, because I want you to understand it. When we think the same thought, what does that do? That leads to the same choice, and that choice drives the same behavior, and that same behavior, it creates the same experiences, and that experience reinforces the original emotion from the beginning. And it's like being stuck on that treadmill. It just keeps running and running as fast as we can. It doesn't matter how fast we try to escape these things, they're still running in that loop. And the narcissist may have set us on this path, absolutely. But now we're the ones that are running that cycle over and over again. It's our mind. So how do we step off of this treadmill? And the first step is to become conscious of the process. We need to just kind of wake up, and because it's about paying attention. And I mean really paying attention to how we think and how we act and how we feel in the moment. Because narcissistic abuse, it does leave like a fog. And it's that moment in that fog that we realize that we're on that treadmill, and we take our first step towards freedom just by noticing that it's an old pattern, old trauma cycle that's repeating itself. And you can think of it like we're driving a car that's on autopilot, right? And we've been on this route so many times. We follow these set patterns by the narcissist, and we barely notice what's happening. But what if you want to change the destination? If you're changing the destination and you're in autopilot, you have to actually take the wheel, because that's the only way that we can wake up to the choices that we've been making and the patterns that we're following. And then we can stop letting the narcissist pass control, define our future and change our destiny, because awareness becomes key. Because when we start to notice these connections, how our thoughts lead to our actions, and how those actions create our experiences, and how those experiences shape our emotions, we begin to see, where we can make different choices that lead to different behaviors and different experiences, and ultimately a different, way, a different outcome. And it's like learning how to read a map of our own mind and seeing all the detours that the narcissist tried to lead us down, and finally choosing our own path. Shannon, hey, after speaking with you a couple weeks ago, I'm so glad we got to connect. Hey, I'm so glad that we got to connect. Good. Oh, and then yay, you got your car. Yeah, that's your freedom. It's amazing. Cool. And I'm glad you're on the journey, and I'm glad we got to connect. And I'm glad you're actually connecting here, because there's a lot of information about stuff. And I know we only met briefly, but you can kind of start to see, even from that meeting that we had, how all of this stuff, all of these old patterns are starting to make sense. Because what we do realize is that it's not easy, but it is worth it. And change takes effort. It takes courage to look at the patterns that we've been living and saying, this isn't working for me anymore. But the moment that we take that first step towards breaking the cycle, towards creating a life that isn't dictated by a narcissist's past manipulation, no, We start creating a life that's shaped by the future that we want. And it's like being given a new compass after years of being lost in the maze that was just like the walls were just being put up by somebody else. It wasn't even us, right? Because recovery is a process of self awareness. But why is self awareness so important? It's because the more conscious we are, the more conscious that we become of those unconscious patterns that are kind of running in the background, the thoughts, the emotions, and the beliefs that are kind of running on autopilot, the less likely we are to slip back into those old self-belief systems that are keeping us stuck. Narcissistic, abuse programs our minds into these patterns like this. But with awareness, we can begin to rewire our brains and start choosing freedom over fear. And it's like getting out of the fog that the narcissist put us in and finally seeing clearly again. Because here's an example to just kind of think about. Like imagine that you're walking through your day and a thought crosses your mind. And maybe it's something like, I'm not good enough, you know, I'll never be able to heal. It's a thought, right? And now, if we're not aware that thought of what that thought is, we just slide right back into that old behavior pattern unchecked. And before we know it, what happens is we start that thought starts influencing how we feel, and then how we act, and then how we see ourselves, just from that one thought. But what if we caught that thought? What if we just kind of, oh, I caught you, I'll hold you, right? What if we stopped that thought in tracks and just said, wait a minute, this isn't me. This is not the real me. Because here's the thing, those thoughts, they're not coming from you. They're coming from the trauma and the narcissistic abuse. And they're echoes of our past experiences of toxic manipulation and the emotional harm that's been creating all these burdens that we've been carrying for way too long. And here's where the power of awareness comes in, right? When we're aware, we start breaking those old patterns, and we stop letting those old thoughts, often implanted by a narcissist, run the show anymore. Instead, we recognize them for what they are, a product of our pain, not a reflection of who we truly are. And think about trauma like a weight that we've been carrying, and it doesn't want to stay with us. It doesn't. It wants to be processed. It wants to be released. And when we finally let it go, the burdens that come with it, the self-doubt, the fear, the shame, they go too. And we can release the chains of narcissistic behavior and take back our lives. And this is why self-awareness is the foundation of healing, because it's not about avoiding our thoughts or pretending that they're not there. It's about shining a light on them and understanding, where they even come from, and choosing to let go of them. And with each, thought that we process, we take a step closer to freedom, to peace, to becoming the version of ourselves where we've always meant to be, no longer defined by the narcissist or their manipulation, but by our true, most powerful self. And what we learn in this healing process of, just observing the mind, it's about becoming aware of what's actually happening in our thoughts, recognizing the patterns, and gently questioning them. And here's the thing, this process isn't something that we should have to face alone. At this stage of recovery, professional support becomes incredibly important, because narcissistic abuse that we've endured has shaped the way that we think. But the healing journey isn't about reprogramming those whole harmful own harmful patterns. I just lost my voice for a second. Right? It's more than that. Like professional support is just so critical, because over time, we get used to carrying the weight of our traumas, especially the weight of when we're dealing with narcissistic abuse, because it amplifies things, because it makes everything so personal. And sometimes, we even start to believe that this burden, this constant self-doubt, this constant manipulation, the emotional control, is just a part of who we are. But that's not the truth. With the right professional, support, someone who's skilled in helping people process your experience, we can guide you through this. We can help you untangle the chaos of the narcissist left behind. And recovery is like we have programs that will help guide you through that. And you can just book a free assessment. You can book a free assessment. Just go to narcovery.com/calendar, and we can have a free call. You can also join my groups. We meet every Wednesday for North America, every Tuesday for my European clients, and that's at narcovery.com /healing dash circle. Or if you're very self-directed, take my recovery from manipulation course. It's at narcovery.com/manipulation. And all of these can be found on narcovery.com. Because, to recover, what does that actually mean? You can think of it like, climbing up a mountain. And when you're navigating a steep, rocky trail, having someone who knows the terrain that can make all the difference, right? Because it's just like you're having somebody that's holding a map for you, that's guiding you, and they know where the dangerous spots are, and they know how they can support you when the climb starts to feel too hard and becomes way too hard to manage alone. And that's what a skilled professional does in the recovery process. They help you see the burdens that you've been carrying, the emotional weight of the narcissistic abuse, and guard you towards healing and releasing them. Because the truth is, we all need help sometimes. And there's no shame in that, because healing from narcissistic abuse isn't about just doing the inner work. It's about having someone who can hold space for you, someone who can remind you of your strength when you feel like giving up. And that emotional toll of narcissistic abuse, it can leave you feeling just really drained sometimes. And having support reminds you that you have the resilience to move forward. And that's why recovery even exists, because we've created programs specifically designed to help you navigate this journey, from guiding you through the emotional weight of your experiences, particularly the lasting effects of narcissistic abuse, to helping you develop new, healthier patterns. And our goal is to walk alongside you every step of the way. And this isn't just about surviving, but thriving beyond the narcissist's grasp. And if you want to know more about me, I'm holding actually an open house next Tuesday, and it's a live Zoom link that you can talk directly to me, and you can be seen and you can be heard. You can register for that open house at narcovery.com/open house. The link should also be in the captions or in the descriptions. And it just I want you to know that you're not alone, that you don't have to walk this path alone, because recovery from narcissistic abuse is a process. But it's with the right support, it's a process that can lead you to freedom, to peace, to deeper connection with yourself. And the damage caused by a narcissist doesn't define you, because with guidance, you can reclaim your life and your worth. And recovery is about learning new skills to separate ourselves from our past. And you can think about it this way: for so long, old beliefs and old patterns shaped by narcissistic abuse have been running the show. And they've been dictating how we think and how we feel and how we act. But what if we could step back? What if we could just kind of take a breath, start to see these old patterns for what they really truly are? That's where self reflection comes in. That's the skill that we can harness to truly know ourselves and feel better, to free from the toxic influence of narcissistic conditioning. And here's what self reflection allows us to do: it lets us see the thoughts and the behaviors of our old self, the survival self, allows us to see them. And the ones that was shaped by narcissistic abuse, the one that was shaped by fear, by the need to protect ourselves. And when we shine a light into those own patterns, like incredible things happen. The old programming and narcissistic manipulation, it loses its grip. Think of it like it's a fire that's burning itself out. The survival self, the old version of us that was built to cope in narcissistic control, starts to burn itself up. It's like removing the fuel that's been, feeding it for years. And as we let go of those old patterns, the guilt, the fear, the self-doubt, that the narcissist planted in us, something new begins to emerge. The true self, free and strong. And this is where the magic really happens inside our own brain. When that old wiring, the wiring that's shaped by narcissistic abuse, starts to fade, new wiring lights up. And it's the wiring, it's like rewiring an old house. And you're replacing all the outdated, the manipulative circuits, that there's something stronger and more reliable that's coming. And these new thoughts that are conditioned into our body, into our emotional state of readiness, free from trauma and narcissist planted. So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, let's say you're hit with a flashback, or an overwhelmed by just an intrusive thought that was once fueled by narcissistic control. Instead of spiraling into that same old reaction, the skills that you've developed allow you to reset quickly. You've trained your brain to recognize to trigger and to ground yourself and to respond in a healthier way. And it's not about avoiding the feeling, it's about creating space for them without letting them control you, as the narcissist once did. And this is the power of recovery. We can commit to learning and practicing these skills. We can transform not just how we think, but how we feel and how we live. And that old survival self built to cope with the narcissist manipulation no longer runs the show. Instead, we step into a version of ourselves that's grounded, that's aware, that's ready to thrive, that's free from the chaotic chains of narcissistic abuse. Because recovery is about learning new skills and to separate ourselves from the past. For years, maybe even decades for some of us, narcissistic beliefs and old patterns have been running the show, and they dictate how we think and how we feel and how we act. And it's like being trapped in a play where we didn't write the script, but we're stuck performing it over and over again, replaying these old toxic scripts, and it's maddening. But what if we could just step backstage for a moment? What if we could just pause, just take a breath and begin to see those narcissistic patterns for what they truly are? That's the power of self-reflection. It's not just a skill, it's a tool for transformation. It helps us observe, question, and understand the stories that we've been living by, especially the ones that narcissists shaped. So what does self-reflection really do? It allows us to meet our old self, the survival self, the version of us that was shaped by narcissistic trauma, by fear, by the need to protect at all costs. And it's the part of us that learned to stay small and to stay quiet, to stay safe. But here's the thing, that survival self doesn't have to define us anymore. We don't have to keep living in the shadow of a narcissist manipulation. Think of it like shining a flashlight into a dark room, because when we eliminate the narcissistic thoughts, the behaviors, the emotions that are tied to the old self, we start to loosen their grip. And they're no longer hidden by the shadows, dictating, our every move. Instead, we begin to see them for what they are, patterns that served us once, but no longer serve us now. And then something incredible happens. The survival self, the part of us that is stuck in fear and pain, just like the lingering effects of narcissistic manipulation, it starts to burn itself out. It's like the fire that's been burning for years. And we finally stopped adding fuel to it. And as the flames die down, something new begins to emerge, like the first rays of sunshine that are breaking through the clouds. And this is where the magic happens inside our own brains. That old wiring, the outdated circuits that keep us stuck in these toxic cycles of fear and insecurity, they begin to fade. And in its place, new wiring lights up. And it's like rewiring an old house, replacing all those worn out circuits, making something stronger and more reliable. And these new thought patterns, right? These new thought patterns, they give our bodies an emotional state of, get us out of that emotional state of readiness, and we're ready to fight back against the narcissist's hold on us. So what does it look like in real life? Like, imagine that you're hit with a flashback or overwhelmed by intrusive thoughts, right? It's those are the scars that are left from years of narcissistic control, and you've spiraled, reenacting all of these old fears, or shutting down completely. But now, the skills that you've developed, you recognize that is a trigger. So you can ground yourself, just like, a tree that's firmly planted into the roots of the earth. You can take a deep breath, and instead of reacting, you respond calmly and intentionally with awareness, finally reclaiming the power that you once had, that you lost to a narcissist. And it's not about avoiding our feelings. It's not. The goal isn't to run from the discomfort of the narcissistic abuse that we've endured. It's about creating a space for those feelings without letting them control us. You're no longer a passenger of this roller coaster of emotion. You're the one that's in the driver's seat, and you're choosing which way to steer and where to go. And this is the true power of recovery. Because when we commit to learning and practicing these skills, everything changes, because we transform not just how we think, but how we feel and how we show up in the world. And that old survival self, shaped by the narcissist manipulation, it no longer runs the show. Instead, we step into a new version of ourselves, one that's grounded, one that's aware, one that's ready to thrive. And this is your journey. And every step that you take is closer to the life that you were always meant to live. You know, free from a narcissist grip and living in your truth. Because healing and support and guidance, what does that actually mean? What does it really mean? Because it's more than just having someone to lean on. It's a process, it's a journey where we learn, the most about ourselves. And we also learn about others, because it's about stepping into the uncomfortable, into the places where we spent years avoiding because of the manipulation and the control of the narcissist. Here's the truth. The moment that we face what makes us feel uncomfortable, we begin to break free from that narcissistic programming. But why is this so hard for us? Because we have traumatized minds, and they're shaped by years of narcissistic abuse sometimes. And what there are is they're wired to avoid the present moment. Why? Because the present moment feels uncertain, and uncertainty feels unsafe. And just like the unpredictable nature of the narcissist, we cling to the familiar patterns of the past, even when they hurt us, because they are predictable. And it's like running the same program on a computer. It may not work well, but at least we know what to expect from the narcissist control. And here's what happens when we challenge the old program. When we stop running from discomfort and start leaning into into what the programming is, the source of those old thought patterns, those patterns of fear, of avoidance, of narcissistic condition, they start to short circuit. It's like taking two wires and going, it jumps, it falters, and then slowly it begins to lose its power over us. Those old thought patterns eventually lose their power over us. And the narcissistic influence, it starts to fade as we reclaim ourselves. And to heal, we have to flip the script, right? To heal, we have to, instead of living in fear of the present moment, we have to actually engage with it fully. We have to embrace consciously with all its uncertainty and unpredictability, especially after the manipulation that we face from narcissistic abuse. Because when our minds are stuck in the past, that past becomes our future. And we end up repeating the same cycles, the same patterns over and over again, as if we're trapped in this narcissist game. And think of it like driving a car. Well, you're staring at the rear view mirror. If all we see is what's behind us, if that's all that we see, how can we navigate our future and one that's ahead? Because the road ahead is there and it's full of new opportunities. But we're too focused on what's already happened in order for us to move forward. And you can see, healing happens when we stop looking, when we start looking into the future and away from the past, right? And seeing it as the future, as a blank canvas, one that we can create. And how do we do that? Well, by leaving behind the old patterns, the old memories, and not ignoring them, but not pretending that things didn't happen, but processing them, understanding them, holding them with loving compassion, and releasing their holds on us. Because it's about stepping into the present moment and saying, this is where I choose to live my life right now, not in the shadow of what was, but in the light of what is. And no longer are we going to let these narcissist narratives, the ones that we kind of fell victim to, control us anymore. Because healing isn't easy, but it is possible. And with the right support and right guidance, it's a journey that we don't have to take alone. It's a path that leads us back into ourselves, to a life where the past, no longer defines the future, especially when you've healed from narcissistic manipulation, because you're not defined by by an old version of your future. And it's easy to get stuck and thinking about what's coming, about how things might be. But here's the thing: your future doesn't have to define you. You're not bound by the idea of what could happen next. It's like walking through a fog, but you can see clearly now. And the next step that you take is the beginning of your clear journey. And I do hope that you do include recovery in your recovery journey. If you want to know more about who I am and what I've done, then come join me at my open house. It's next Tuesday, to register for that event, the link should either be in the comments or it might be in the description below. It's just narcovery.com/open house, and you'll get a Zoom link, and then we can chat live and can hear your story and see what kind of programs that we have that can help. If you're looking for just a one-on-one support, you can access to my online calendar, narcovery.com /calendar, and all the programs are actually listed on narcovery.com. And I do want to thank everyone for who's been following me and supporting me, and it's amazing. It's amazing, this community that we've built, and it's growing and growing every single day. So thank you very much. That's the end of this live, and I hope to chat with you guys soon.